Welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening news. Tonight, we explore the news from the perspective of the Black community with a special takeover episode. The intersection of the Black, Indigenous, people of color, and the LGBTQ plus communities create a unique perspective and challenges that we will explore this evening. It's time to queer up the news. It is 8 p.m. Thursday, July 14th, 2022, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens, you'll see it. Queer News Tonight is supported by viewers like you. We are part of the partnership between Happening Out Television Network and Hotspots Magazine. Hotspots is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ plus experience. We bring you the best of LGBTQ plus news, entertainment, and support of our community.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Jameer Baptiste. Let's welcome anchor Sobourney Barnes. Sobourney is a South Florida native who has been an activist and leader in the LGBTQ plus IA community for a decade. An original community member of the Caribbean Pride Festival, Sobourney has been involved with various community partners such as Aqua Foundation and the Stonewall Museum and Archives. She is currently the Fed Club co-chair for Human Rights Campaign South Florida and the vendor coordinator of PrideFête, a grassroots event for the queer Caribbean community. Welcome, Sobourney.
Thank you, Jameer. Nice to be here on my first Black Takeover. But now, folks, it is time to welcome anchor Ederick Johnson. Ederick is a noted local, state, and national leader, speaker, minister, psalmist, and musician. Ederick has been an advocate for the LGBT and HIV/AIDS community for over 10 years. He's a worshipful master of New Era Lodge number 69, Prince Hall, an active member of NAACP Broward County Chapter, and Liberty Elks Lodge. Welcome, Ederick.
Also a member of Blue Phi.
Ooh,
Beta Sigma fraternity.
there we go.
Cowbells.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I am out the closet, and that's why I'm looking so fabulous. I want us to welcome our anchor, Carvelle Estriplet. Carvelle is a founder of Carvelle Bikes, the only LGBTQ bicycle business in Wilton Manor. She is located in the Wilton Collective building on the Drive. She is unapologetically proud Black trans woman and is a member of the Wilton Manor Community Affairs Advisory Board. She also serves as the deputy director for the Florida Democratic LGBTQIA plus caucus. Let me tell you all, she is a woman not to be reckoned with. Good evening, my sister.
Ooh.
Good evening. Thank you for the introduction.
There you go.
We are the reporters for the Queer News Tonight, and this evening we are beginning with queering the headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of queer news for today, Thursday, July 14th. Today is International Non-Binary People Day.
Well, here we have it. Queer up gay culture. Here are the big issues Black LGBTQ plus people face in the next year. This evening, we begin with an open discussion topic. The LGBTQ plus community is facing attacks by politicians and evangelicals. The Black community is facing voter restrictions and healthcare challenges. Tonight, we start by opening up the table for our anchors to discuss the intersectionality of these and many other issues that are specific to or most impacting the Black LGBTQ community. So what do you guys say? What's popping off?
Where do we start? I mean,
How do you unpack all of this?
Yeah.
I mean, we're living in a time where, you know, people would rather ban words than ban assault weapons. We're living in a time where people want to tell women how to deal with their bodies, but they don't want to face reality of real issues. Reason being, oppression.
It's like you just said, it's we have the impact, we have the coming after our rights to vote, obviously bodily control, abortion and things like that, and now you have to add a layer of racial. There's racism. There's always structural racism already in healthcare and also obviously in the system, but I think it's the fire bells are ringing. We need to stand up. Action is required.
Agreed.
I don't know. Yeah.
Agreed. I feel like for whatever reason now, especially in today's climate, I'm going to call it the post-Trump era, it is so much more obvious. There's no more covert racism.
Yes.
It's like, no, we don't like you. There's no more covert sexism. It's like, no, we want to control women's bodies. There is no longer any semblance of we're trying to pretend that, okay, we actually like this portion of the community or we care about them. It's nope, we're trying to go back to the 1950s. Let's bring it back that way.
And what I tell people, it is very important to vote. The issues that we're seeing now could have been prevented with voting. People think the only time that you should vote is the presidential election, but my brothers and my sisters, you need to understand local government. You talk about police brutality, well, policy and advocacy start on the local level with electing your attorney general. These laws and policies and procedures, when we talk about inadequate housing for our people, it starts on the local level. Are you going down to your city council meeting and assuring that monies that they receive from federal and state government is being allocated for housing, being allocated for food? The reason why people are dying, the reason why people are not prospering, is the lack of access. And the Klan don't wear hoods anymore. No, they don't. The Klan don't wear hoods anymore, my brothers and my sisters.
In the state capitol.
They wear shirts and ties. They wear shirts and ties, and they wear robes, and they're camouflaging themselves as politicians. And they're making rules and laws. We don't no longer have colored only, white only. No, they're creating laws such as abortion, trying to overturn Wade versus Wade, trying to overturn, the right of marriage, trying to overturn the right to whom you can love.
But what I'm hearing from everybody at this table is that we're just repeating the same thing over and over again. How do we find people to go out and vote? How do we get people to go out and vote?
Even then, they're actively in this state. They're making it more difficult even for local government to do anything. I'm part of the Community Fair Advisory Board, and then this state, particularly in Florida, they actually have stripped the power away from locals and towns to enact their own laws. That's why you don't have Walter Mayer said you can't have assault weapons. We can't even do that. So yes, you're right about active vote, but when I say action, I'm talking about actually not just only voting. I'm using it for myself. Is to be part of the system. Be in the system.
Be in the system. Speak up. Because.
But I guess we need to move on too.
And just to say, as much as it was overt then and somewhat covert now, I think Sobourney touched on it, Ederick touched on it, and so did you, Carvelle. It's all intermingled into one. As much as it was overt then, it's just as overt now, and as much as it was covert then, it's just as much it is secret now. It's just pure systematic, where we need to change it, and whatever that looks like, we have to interject ourselves, each one of us.
Yes, we do. And just since we are on that topic of politics, folks, it is time to queer up politics. The midterm race is crucial for LGBTQ plus future, and one is a Black Senate candidate from Florida, Val Demings.
Yes.
With the overturning of Roe v. Wade, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas has stated that other cases will be next, including the one that overturned anti-sodomy laws and the one that protects same-sex marriage. With President Biden's record low approval rating, experts agree that midterm prospects look bleak for Democrats. Without a large majority in the House and Senate, there is no chance of congressional action to protect LGBTQ plus rights. Yet, Republicans are expected to gain the majority. Here in Florida, there is hope that candidate Val Demings will win the primary in August and that she can defeat the anti-LGBTQ plus Marco Rubio. Folks, let's have it.
We're all rooting
let's
for
first
her.
say this. You know what I'm going to first say about Clarence Thomas? He is the the textbook definition of Uncle Tom, but that's another thing right there. I said that right there. And,
She let it out the bag.
Yeah, I am saying that. So, but Val Demings, we need to get her in the Senate, and it is kind of looking dark and bleak, but I'm very optimistic. The Democrats need to be more vocal. As like the Republicans, they're unapologetic. They're saying, yeah, well, I'm being hateful on this.
They definitely are now.
The Democrat is messaging is clouded. Even this, they had all the opportunity, knowing that the Supreme Court was going to turn over Roe versus Wade, and we already know that was going to happen, and there was no messaging. Just totally dropped the ball.
The biggest thing for me is that I think we rarely ever touch on the real situation. And what's so obvious to me is that our country, and it's been talked about for decades, but our country is ruled by money. Our thoughts are how we act, everything. You know, it always seems. Yeah, but typically, think about it, because right now what's going on are like Roe versus Wade, for instance, women abortion is basically a high topic issue that most people agree on, that abortions are okay, you know, and all those other ones, you know, like the guns. Most people agree that guns need to be some level of restriction on them, you know, but yet because the economy is not doing so well in terms of you having to pay more at the gas tank, you don't like President Biden, and therefore you're not going to vote for issues that basically protect your rights. It makes no sense, because if you look at it from an issue standpoint, if you look at it from protecting abortion and you look at it to gun restrictions, you would be for it. But the fact that you're shoving out more money to pay gas, you automatically aren't going to vote Democrats into the seats that you need to safeguard your rights. It's just ridiculous.
You know what I find problematic and very troubling to me? I hate to see a member of the LGBTQIA family in the Republicans. That scares the living hell out of me. I don't know if we can. I'm sorry.
Don't give me nightmares, and they're out there.
They're blatantly out there.
And they're what I call homophobic homosexuals.
Homophobic homosexuals.
Homophobic homosexuals. But as it relates to Clarence Thomas, it's so funny that he wants to overturn all of this, but yet there's a law that they want to overturn that protects his marriage with his white wife.
Yes.
But he won't talk about
that. He don't want to talk about that tea. Clarence Thomas, I'm coming for you.
He's leaving that word.
You want to leave that?
He embodies that. He embodies that.
We should all come for him.
Yeah.
Yes.
You broke that black card. Thank you.
Anyway.
What black card?
We got one.
He lost
Anyway.
Yes, he did.
Nevertheless.
What's
Queer child girl. Nevertheless, queer up drag culture. RuPaul, legendary legacy as a black LGBTQ icon. Once upon a time, there was a little black girl from the Brewster Streets project of Detroit, Michigan. However, picture it. 1993. Those words were spoken by the Black Queen of Comedy, LaWanda Page, stated in a song that will bring in an aspiring young actor and performer out the obscurity and into the spotlight. Y'all know who I'm talking about? I'm talking about none other than RuPaul Charles. We'll going from gender-bending frontman of a rock group called Wee Wee Pole to a drag superstar seemingly overnight. RuPaul has gone from middle-class club performer to one of the most prominent black entertainers in America and has brought LGBTQIA issues and drag into pop culture. Which,
she did.
Yeah,
she's problematic, but she did do that.
Oh, sis problematic.
All the way.
All the way, but she's unapologetic
about it.
Problematic. She's unapologetic.
And she brought especially trans women of color, into pop culture. I remember watching Sister Sister in the episode that she was on. That was a show about a black family that was specifically targeting black audiences, black young girls. And there's RuPaul, if I'm not mistaken, as either shop owner or shop assistant.
Yeah.
Sassy as heck, going up against the mother, and you live for it. Like literally one of the original club kids RuPaul has
Yeah.
brought so much. We're not gonna talk about
We
that.
forgot about that. Yeah, she's back in the 90s.
Oh.
Yeah.
What club kid?
The club kids. Okay. So
Tell the
if I'm not
story.
mistaken, early 80s, early 90s, there was this specific underground gay and drag club culture in New York City. So
It was not only New York and Boston. I was living it.
Ooh,
That
yes,
era
so you got it.
We got
You were there.
we got somebody who was there. She was there.
I was at the New York
Testify.
club scene, but yeah, it's like go out late night, dress up over the top.
Crazy.
But it was like, okay, you're dressing up, but not like for you're gonna drag and do a performance. Just the
Yeah, it was just
street,
to go
the
out.
world is the performance, and a lot of drugs too. But that's,
Let's not even.
but that's
go
another.
there.
That was
that's
the
another story.
downfall.
It's
We don't judge.
No, we're not doing that.
We not.
No, but
gonna-
definitely,
But-
I think RuPaul has so many layers. And
Yeah.
some of them are not the best, but there's a lot of them that are pretty good layers that she has opened doors for so many people.
Yes.
And I think Sobourney touched on it with Carvelle's experience. It's just amazing how many different decades of life you can see RuPaul in. You know, like you talked about the Club Kid era where, again, Carvelle was in, and then the time when she was on Sister Sister. I remember when she had her own late night talk show on VH1.
She did?
You know? Yeah,
she had
her own.
yeah.
When drag wasn't
before,
even
way
Wasn't
before.
even talked
about.
She had this on VH1. You know,
Yeah.
so there's just so many layers of her, and as much as a problem this cisgender queen could be, is as good as a person she has been to our community. So sometimes it's those problematic people that we have to take.
We take them with a large
You
grains
know,
of salt.
you know?
I mean, like Ellen, she be problematic, but
But
look
we
what
got-
she did for lesbian culture.
Yeah,
so
exactly. And it's, the thing is all about growth, right, Ederick? All about growth.
Ederick Faith
Some
was like,
things ain't forgivable. I'm sorry. You got
that right.
I'm
All
a
honesty, you
Christian.
got that
I
right.
believe in Jesus, but I'm more related to Paul and Peter than anything.
Queering up trans rights. After the Emmy nomination backlash continues over Dave Chappelle's controversial Netflix special, Dave Chappelle's Netflix special, Closer, received significant backlash due to transphobic jokes made during the comic act. Despite that, special was still nominated for 2 primetime Emmys this week. In the comedy special, Dave Chappelle argues against the comparison between LGBTQ plus rights movement and civil rights of the Black community. Tonight, we're going to discuss if there is support for the LGBT community within the Black community, and a very significant if there is a support for transgender members of our community in the
ooh, Lord,
They
I'm
trying to
sick. No,
kill us.
this
So,
story.
I have a question.
yeah.
First of all, what was said? What was said?
Well, pull up the quotes.
No, but here's
No,
the thing.
he
Is,
was-
we're not talking about, okay, for clarify, we're not talking about Dave Chappelle and his comments. And
Oh, we talking about all of
No,
them.
because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can.
But we're also
Yeah.
talking about just the relationship
Yeah,
of the between the Black community and the
even Black
LGBT
comedy
community and
Yeah.
in
As a
specifics the
whole.
trans community. You know, like, and I know what Ederick is touching on because he wants to know exactly what he said to dissect it and see how offensive it might be, or you know whether it's just comedic.
I mean, he's not offensive.
Rhetoric,
I mean, to
you
me,
know?
he's not.
So-
I don't want to. I thought we didn't want.
So I'm a comedian, and I say some stuff that can be offensive to gay people. And I give you an example, even with
Spit it out.
Samson, who is a well-known LGBTQ queer comedian. Comedians make people laugh. They
That's what
say
they do, yeah.
stuff
They be outrageous and provocative.
that people are scared to say.
Yeah.
My thing is this, as it relates to Black and LGBTQ issues, I'm like this. And people may disagree with me, but I'm going to be problematic for a second. Black is the new Negro. I mean, gay is the new Negro.
There we go.
I am.
But I'm also going to touch on
So
the
is
fact
the-
of just Black comedy as a whole. There's always been a piece of, okay, I'm not going to say take a shot, but have something in the set against or making fun of the queer community. Like, I remember Kings of Comedy. I loved that special as a kid. And I literally remember the part where, what is his name? Not Cedric the Entertainer. Gosh darn dag.
Bernie?
Yes, Bernie Mac.
Bernie
May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
He was talking about his nephew who was a homosexual. and now he come down the stairs all sassy and talk like this.
That was me. Because that was me.
That was Ederick closeted self back then.
I was nothing but a little girl.
When he used to make when he was homophobic and used to make fun of the gays,
and still do.
But that's just it. We can make fun of ourselves because he was also talking about like the Black community where it's like, yeah, my sister owned crack. Like we know we all got that one relative.
But
and a cousin named Peaches.
But
I got an uncle named Peaches.
But there's also, let's talk about it in all seriousness. Like, for instance, there was Kevin Hart who came out with that joke that isn't funny. You know,
what was the joke?
I
don't remember.
Kevin Hart said if his child ever was sashaying down the road, something along the lines, he would hit him in the back of the head.
That's problematic.
You see, so
but see, that attitude is still problematic in the Black community.
Yeah.
That being macho, I want to have.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the underlying tone of Dave Chappelle comedy and stuff like that. And going back to clarify, as a Black trans woman, I watched the special. I don't think he was offensive. He is a comedian. He's supposed to be provocative and make fun of people. And guess what? Comedians make fun of everybody. If you can't laugh at yourself, then
exactly.
But that undertone of hypermasculinity in the Black community and saying, "Oh, I don't want to have a gay son," or I had personally my dad say, "I'd rather have you be in jail or be that." But we're good. We're good now. Me and my dad.
Yeah, but
the point is that hypermasculinity say, "Oh, we can't have those sissify and all this stuff like that." It's still very problematic.
Tell me why I just saw a clip of an interview where they were asking some famous Black guy, would he rather his son be more like Future or Russell, that's currently with Sierra? And he was like, Future. I was like, what? And then they turned the script on him real quick and they said, who would you rather your daughter date? And the guy paused real quick. It's like, okay, so you rather your son be like Future, who was a awful man to his girl and stuff like that, rather than Russell, who was a sweetheart and still is to Sierra, you know, surprising her with and all that stuff. But then when it came to who you want your daughter to date, you wouldn't want her to raise the man that you raised.
It's you know, it just masculinity.
Yeah, you know,
it's like about.
And you don't even, and you can't even make sense of it.
Raise your children, your sons. Raise your sons like the men you want your daughters to marry.
Yes, and that's a pure, simple sentence. That's it. And if you did that, then you did a good job. And we're no one to judge, you know, but at the same time, you know, here we go. Queer Up Hotspots Magazine and the Gay Agenda. PrideFête, an LGBTQ plus Caribbean festival, comes to South Florida. Hotspots, in partnership with Pride Fort Lauderdale and CAB, the city of Wilton Manors, presents PrideFête, an LGBTQ plus Caribbean festival taking place at the enchanting Richardson Historical Park and Nature Preserve on Saturday, August 13th from 6 to 11 p.m. The name says it all, fête, a French word that means party, is widely used in the Caribbean community to communicate Carnival festivals. And of course, Pride is synonymous with the LGBTQ plus folks donating our unapologetic self-expression. Combine the two words and there you have it, PrideFête, a Carnival-inspired party celebrating the food, music, and overall spirit of the Caribbean culture for the LGBTQ plus community and our allies. At the door, tickets are $7 general admission and $75 for VIP. But you can get your tickets now at pre-sale prices, $5 general admission and $50 VIP, which provides guests with festival admission, indoor AC access with complimentary Caribbean hors d'oeuvres, and 5 free drink tickets. And premium stage view. Bring your island flag and show your pride because it's going to be a Carnival fête of island dancing, whining, eating, and an all-out party in love of the culture. Get your tickets and learn more about the event at www.pridefete.lgbt.
There we go.
So,
Yeah, well,
it's like we have,
Mike Board,
right?
Mike
We have a
Board was
mix of
sponsoring.
people that are actually
Yeah.
on this
Yeah.
this
So that's
effort
gonna be
to have
exciting.
Pride Caribbean back in Wilton Manors. You know, it started with Sobourney here and at
Yes.
SunServe,
SunServe.
moved on to Pride Fort Lauderdale, and now we're all partnering
Yeah,
back to bring it to Wilton Manors.
Yes.
You know what I think the beauty of this is? That, think of it, a couple of years ago, we only had one Pride. Essentially, we only had one Pride, and the Pride did not encompass us. You know, even with Stonewall, they whitewashed Stonewall, yet there was a black and brown transgender woman who threw the first stone. But we whitewashed it. But it's so beautiful that we are celebrating the different cultures of the LGBTQI community, because when people think of the LGBTQI community, they think of white men.
Yes, they do.
But let me tell you, this is a testament that that's not the case. We come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, and all, and different backgrounds and cultures. And I think, especially having it in Wilton Manor,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
it's telling you that work is happening.
Yeah.
And I want to thank people like you, that y'all doing the work, especially for it to happen in Wilton Manor, where we know that there's stigma with the black and brown community even being welcomed in there. So for you all to be having it there, and then you did the thing in February, the cookout.
Yeah, the cookout.
Phenomenal. I'm loving all of this.
Thank you. Yes, and it's so crazy because this is a marginalized community on top of a marginalized community on top of a marginalized community. Like we getting deep up in there, honey.
We have all the check
All the
boxes,
check boxes. You know, the only thing we ain't got is the cisgender black woman, you know, in this. But, you know, it's just amazing that we're all coming together to celebrate something that really was brought to the forefront years ago and now is coming back in a great way. You know, I'm excited for it. I hope the community is as well, and I want to see everybody in them feathers gyrating and eating that good food.
Can we come
over there?
Right?
Can we come just how we did to the West Palm Beach Pride? Can we come just like that?
Dress as you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
There may be children at this event. Please do not have certain things showing. I'm just gonna say that.
So I can't.
I've been to Pride and I've seen somebody literally just wearing a condom. So
well, this ain't for them.
this ain't that.
So I can't wear my jockstrap.
I mean, have fun. Just wear it with your feathers too.
I can't wear my jockstrap.
With your
Just wear it with
feathers,
feathers.
yeah.
Gotta wear it with costume.
All right. Yes.
Come with a whole costume. You good?
Yes.
Oh, I gotta come with a whole. We gotta go shopping there.
Yes,
There you
right. Oh, we field day shopping.
Oh my God, we're gonna shopping. Making my way downtown. Okay.
Oh, that's
Okay.
a black
Pride
out.
Factory just open. Pride Factory just open up. Right
Oh, so we're gonna get leather with it. I might even go. But,
We need Jesus right now.
ooh, see, I was gonna do a quick promo just like, hey folks, if anyone is interested in being part of PrideFête as a vendor, please reach out to us at www.pridefete.lgbt, and there is a link for you to give us a little bit information about yourself so we can get that process started. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you all there. But now to get us some Jesus.
Praise him.
We gotta do the finger. I was waiting for the finger. Oh, it is time to queer up, queer culture. Oh, time to queer up religion. The Black church and LGBTQ plus collide in Pride in the Pews. Queer News Tonight has reported in the past on the divide between the LGBTQ plus community and traditionally Black churches. Now a new organization is working to bridge that gap. Pride in the Pews is a grassroots nonprofit that offers a database of queer-accepting Black churches and also helps to reach out to traditionally Black churches and educate them on how to be more supportive of their LGBTQ plus congregation. More information can be found at prideinthepews.com.
Yes.
Let's say it.
This is very, very much needed. I definitely, this is a breath of fresh air for me because, we had that, going back to the Kiki Project days, we had the very first conversation and it was called The Pew. You've seen The View, well, we had The Pew.
Ooh.
And where we invited our cisgender men and women pastors to the table with LGBTQ faith leaders and people who weren't of the faith. Like Jamal Starks, he was on the panel, to bridge the gap, the intersection between homosexuality and the Black church. The reason why there's homophobia within the Black church, because the Black church, fail to realize and identify what true love really is. That's why there's a problem, because they can't rightly divide the word of God, what it really says about same gender loving. But that's a whole nother show, child.
Yeah, I was about to say.
And we could go deeper why they feel that way, because
They stay in my inbox, them preachers in my inbox, and on my Christian mingle.
show it on the screen.
They on the grinder, child. They on the grinder. Get the phone out. I want to see these receipts.
I got receipts.
And I think it's such a great idea, you know, but we wanted to infiltrate those churches that aren't really affirming of the LGBT
That's where we
community,
need
you
that
know.
should be the
Those are
focus,
the ones.
like you said, Eddie. It should be that, and yeah, it's still a wonderful program and organization.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, I'm hopeful to see, and I'm excited to see when they get that one church that necessarily.
Now, when you get that one church who wasn't, baby, when you talking about somebody that's going to
let's do the
shout.
dance.
I can't even shout because I don't got no rhythm. But baby, best to believe I'm going to find some rhythm on that day. If you can get a church that has been known to be homophobic in the community, we won't say any names. However, Karma, you know who you are. Nevertheless,
Talking about they proud in the pews.
proud. Why they're in the pews, they be on Jack.
Jack.
But nevertheless, people, as we're talking about the church, next we want to report on our partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church. And guess where we at? We're here, broadcasting live from the set here at the Sunshine Cathedral. They are supporting partnership of Happening Out Television Network. They broadcast the largest LGBTQ plus religious live broadcast in the world, as more than 30,000 watch every Sunday. Touch your neighbor. Say, neighbor.
Neighbor.
I said, touch your neighbor.
Well, I got to touch.
Monkeypox girl. I'm just-
And touch your neighbor. Say, neighbor.
Neighbor.
They watch every Sunday
They watch
watch
every
it.
at
Sunday.
10:30 a.m. Guess what?
Easter.
Watch this.
I'm Taisha Best, your queer community servant, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Woo. Well, folks, this has been an amazing day, but that is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show. Is our community important to you?
If it is, then help us by liking and subscribing. Ring the bell for updates. Tell all your friends on Jack, Grindr, Christian Mingle, Bell, wherever you do your hookup site. Let them know and share the great news and the gospel with your friends and family.
Post this broadcast in many groups that you're a member of, and tonight's stories are about a community and deserve the attention of your family and friends.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. I love it.
If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Happening Out Television Network and Queer News Tonight. I'm your anchor, Jameer Baptiste, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Sobourney Barnes, Ederick Johnson, and Carvelle Estriplet, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. Before we end our show, we have one final story. He was dancing, girl.
Child, y'all, we're going to queer up the big interview, y'all. Did y'all hear? Bronx Pride CEO, Black trans man Ebony Coleman talks about why the LGBTQ plus don't support each other. Child. Recently, Queer News anchor Al Ferguson sat down with Ebony Coleman. He is the founder of the LGBTQ Center known as Destination Tomorrow and is the only Black transgender grant writer in the country, helping to distribute grants for the gileadsciences Transcend Community Impact. Watch this.
In an era of Donald Trump, the radical GOP, a Supreme Court that may limit or even reverse LGBTQ plus rights, an America that is grappling with race issues from Black Lives Matter to white supremacists, and what states are doing in dramatic anti-trans laws in health, sports, schools, and more. It can be a very scary time for members of our LGBTQ plus community. Activist Sean Ebony Coleman represents a unique intersection of so many of these topical issues. He is founder and executive director of Destination Tomorrow, a grassroots agency and the LGBTQ Center of the Bronx borough of New York City. Destination Tomorrow runs Bronx Pride. He is a Black transgender man who also runs the Bronx Trans Collective. His Twitter handle perhaps defines him best as, quote, a political nerd and know-it-all from Brooklyn finding his way in the world, end quote. To help us better understand the intersections that I just described, we welcome Sean Ebony Coleman to Queer News Tonight. Good evening, Sean.
Hello, Al. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much. We're very happy to have you with us tonight and introduce you to our LGBTQ audience. Let's begin right out of the gate about your organization in the Bronx, Destination Tomorrow, and your Bronx Pride event. Tell us a little bit about the two organizations.
So Destination Tomorrow is the Bronx LGBT Center. What we wanted to do is our center is rooted in economic empowerment, right? The Bronx is historically a Black and brown marginalized community, all right? And we wanted to make sure that the center, as well as the programs and services that we offered, represented the community members in a way that provided them with the tools they need to be successful. So things like GED, job readiness, financial literacy, professional development, those were things that we wanted to make sure our community members had access to. We also want to make sure that community members did not have to leave their borough or their neighborhood in order to obtain these services. For a long time, when you think about LGBTQ services in New York City, historically you'd go downtown to Lower Manhattan or somewhere in Manhattan to receive these services. And I just didn't feel like we had that it was necessary. Bronx Pride, which we just had, and we had an amazing time, it's really just a celebration of the LGBTQ folks, residents, community members in the Bronx. Wanted folks to understand that there's a thriving LGBT community here, and we wanted to celebrate too. We've been doing the event since 2005 when we were a part of the Bronx Community Pride Center, which was the old LGBT center here. They closed in 2012, and we just continued it on. We've always had a really, really great outpouring of community members, not just Bronx residents, but other folks from the other outer boroughs attend our event as well. And we just wanted to, give back to community, especially since we've been inside for so long.
I think it's always so interesting as you talk about Destination Tomorrow and being a 501c3. We at Queer News Tonight have talked so much in the last couple of years about the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, as America knows, New York was for a time ground zero, literally, for COVID-19. It always fascinates us how our 501c3s survive, the funding challenges, the fundraising challenges. What has it been like for funding for transgender, non-conforming agencies like yours? What has it been like?
That's a loaded question, but I'm going to do my best to answer it. Without COVID-19, funding for trans and gender non-conforming led organization has been a bit difficult, right? I think you have to first understand that when it comes to funding, there's not a lot of equity right, when there's this huge disparity with regards to who actually receives funding for these types of services when it comes to a non-for-profit. So we were already, as a trans agency in general, receiving about maybe, at one point it was 2 cents per dollar. Now it's about 4 cents for every dollar that's dedicated to the LGBT community. So we're already starting there, and then the COVID-19 pandemic kind of exacerbated that, right? It showed what we already knew, that there was this disparity that existed, but it also showed that the need was greater within our communities, right? Because for a lot of folks within, particularly the trans and gender nonconforming community, it wasn't safe to shelter in place, right? Or you didn't have permanent housing to shelter to, so that became a problem. Those folks that deal with isolation, depression, and anxiety, they now have to be alone somewhere, possibly without any other support that understood who they were. So we were dealing with these challenges as well. I think what happened to our benefit was that organizations, corporations recognized that, right? They recognized that these disparities existed, and they put together funds that would help particularly trans and gender nonconforming organizations and community members. Because a lot of the things, it was some things as simple as needing your cell phone bill, and then other things that were like wanting an organization that they would be able to go to. So as soon as we got the green light from the city, we reopened. And we put all the safety measures in place, but we wanted to make sure that our community members had a safe space that they can go to, whether it was just to hang out for a minute because they needed someone to talk to. We wanted to make sure that we were still going to be there for our community. But with regards to funding, it's always been a challenge. And COVID actually exposed that challenge to a lot of folks that we had been telling all along.
I think it's interesting when we were talking, you represent so many different boxes. You're a trans man. You represent the African American community, you represent the LGBTQ community, and you talk about commonality. I'm curious about where, from your perspective, we are in the LGBTQ plus community itself on issues of Black and brown. Are we doing a good enough job? Are we standing up well enough for the Black and brown community broadly and the Black and brown LGBTQ community?
I'd say more can be done. And I say that because I think even when we spoke about those disparities, right, I shouldn't be the only one that's bringing up the fact that there are these disparities that exist in funding and in services and in programs and just overall visibility. My white cis counterparts should also be having these discussions and holding themselves to account, right? You can't say you're an ally across the board because it doesn't work like that. An ally has to actually show up and in ways in which the person needs them to show up. And in this moment, I need you to show up and say, yes, there's a disparity when it comes to funding. Yes, there's a disparity when it comes to representation. Yes, race is still an issue, even within an LGBT community. Like, where do we start? What kind of discussions should we be having? And we're not having those discussions. It's not to say that we're not doing any work. It's to say that more work can be done.
Let me counterbalance that. Here in Walton Manors in Fort Lauderdale, there's a lot of conversation about an overwhelming white propensity that may have race issues going on in our own LGBTQ community of not being as open or embracing for Black and brown. Do you agree with that? That the white, especially gay men, white LGBTQ are not doing enough for Black and brown in America?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that statement, but I think it becomes like not wanting to appear to not know what to do, right? Because again, if you're an ally, you should understand what it is you should do. And I think in some ways, it's hard to put yourself in a situation or position that you haven't been in, right? Like sometimes I'll hear my white colleagues and they'll say, well, if with matters of the police, if you just don't resist, and it's like, no, but I can completely comply and still end up dead. Like, so that's not a reality for me, right? It's like they don't understand that lived experience, which is why when you're trying to put together a discussion around race, you have to like bring the party in who is most impacted by who is most impacted. And I think once we begin to do it, you give up a little bit of control, and it may impact your bottom line. But if we're talking about being equitable, and if we're talking about being fair, and if we're talking about this harmonious community that we envision, we're gonna have to lose some things, and hopefully we gain more than we actually lose.
I want to also ask you about what we've watched in the Roe decision in these recent weeks, especially what Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas did. He took it a step farther. First, Thomas is protected by 1967's Loving versus Virginia that granted racial marriage, which he is afforded. If the same justifications that Thomas is questioning in terms of sodomy laws, in terms of contraception, in terms of gay marriage, which he has suggested in his affirming support of the reversal of Roe, it seems it would apply to 1967, the Loving decision on interracial marriage. I'm curious from your perspective, these different boxes you tick, what's going on with Justice Thomas? Not to say that you can speak for him, but I'm just curious in terms of the insight you might have for LGBT America listening to you. What's going on with him?
I've tried to process that, like what the rationale and the thought process. And it's incredibly hard to, because I don't understand how any man, whether they're black, white, brown, whatever, can overwhelmingly make decisions that don't necessarily impact them, right? How do you decide what a woman can ultimately do with her body, and then take it 3 steps further and say what someone can do in their bedroom and who someone can marry, but not yours, right? So I think it's all about control, in my opinion, and I'm lost as to how whether Thomas believes that if ultimately control is to be had over folks, how he doesn't include himself in folks that are being controlled, right? If the thought is that minorities are going to be the ones who are going to lose rights and or power, whatever little power minority folks have, how he doesn't see himself in that same light. So when folks speak about race, I'm not sure if it's just race or if it has more to do with power, right? And when folks have power and privilege, it's incredibly hard to kind of step away or lend it to others, especially others that you have no understanding of. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Brother Thomas doesn't have much understanding when it comes to his LGBTQ siblings.
I want to take it even a step farther in your representation, and that's, of course, talking about trans issues in America. We have watched in the past, Queer News Tonight has very closely reported on the amount of violence and even murder that takes place in America, especially to trans women of color. In the last 12 months, this has escalated far beyond that. We are watching an almost unconditional war declared. You know, we talk about it as the culture war, but it hits the trans community front and center in terms of sports, in terms of healthcare, in terms of states' issues for education. We're sitting here in Florida in the ground zero of Don't Say Gay, and Don't Say Gay is really first and foremost aimed at the trans community, all of the LGBT community, but first and foremost to the trans community. From your perspective, you have a lot of different hats that you're wearing representing our community. Why, help us understand why they're so scared. You're a trans man, you're a black trans man. Why are they so scared of you?
I don't think they're scared of me. I think they recognize that they can use me and my uniqueness as a way to further divide folks, right? So I'll give you an example. When we did marriage equality, we were all in for marriage equality. Everybody across the rainbow was all in for marriage equality. I advocated for it. All of my friends advocated for it. It was what we were adamant that we were going to have the right to marry, and we put together an amazing machine. Right, it was a fundraising machine. It was advocacy. It was outreach. We had a ground game. We were all in, all 50 states, and then we accomplished it. And the next natural thing I thought we were going to do were trans rights, and instead, we walked away as if we had accomplished our mission. And I think to your question, too often that happens. Right, too often it's like, okay, this is done, and we'll go back to that whole white cis queer men or gay men that they've gotten what they need, right? And we work with them to get what they need. And now it's like, oh, but this doesn't really impact us. We don't really need to, I don't really understand it myself. Those kinds of things, rather than just coming out and fighting on behalf of the same folks that fought on behalf of the issue that you needed. And then the other thing is, I don't think we make enough noise about it, right? If this was white gay men being murdered in the street, it'd be an epidemic. We'd be all in the street. We'd be marching to every city hall. We'd be at the White House. We'd be writing letters to everybody. It's black trans women and to some extent black trans men, because we don't get reported in the same ways. We get misgendered even more. But these are black and brown trans bodies that are being killed, and no one's raising hell about it. And I think that is the point.
Sean, you're absolutely crystal clear on what you just said. It must be incredibly heartbreaking to you that's especially white gay men, that's how we're, from your viewpoint of how we're responding. Must be heartbreaking.
It's incredibly heartbreaking, but we're always up for a challenge. So the challenge is to make sure that we speak in a language that is not offensive, right? That we call in. And I'm saying to you, we need you the same way you needed us to get bills, but when it was the AIDS crisis and the marriage equality and every major issue, we were there, and we need that same kind of support and allow us to lead in those moments, right? It doesn't always have to be white cis led. There are some amazing black trans leaders across the state, across the nation. Like, tap into them, ask us what we need, ask us how to organize within our communities, give us the resources, or point us in the right direction for those resources, and then support us.
I want to ask you specifically inside the T of our acronym. Of course, you are a black trans man. In my work at Queer News Tonight, we have escalated over the last couple of years our education in the trans community a lot. I for one, have learned a lot about the trans community in the last couple of years. I have heard so much discussion from trans women that they feel that because trans men are much more passable than trans women, that trans men do not support trans women to the same degree as trans women do of men. What do you think about that observation? Is that true? Is that not true? What do you think about the support trans men have of trans women in the community?
I think it's just another way that folks will use to try to divide us. I think within my network of trans women and trans men, we support each other equally because we all understand what the mission is, right? And the mission is to make sure that our community is represented. The mission is to make sure our community is heard. The mission is to make sure that we increase the visibility, that there are black trans folks that are actually doing significant work. To your point, I think in certain spaces, we are kind of, I don't want to say pitted against each other, but they'll make it, there's room for one trans person, right? And if you got room for one, you got room for more. But there's room for one trans person. So if you got a trans guy there, a trans woman can't come and represent. Even though we have totally different issues, even though we're going to have totally different speaking points, like we have to make sure that these organizers are also, these funders are also not pitting us against each other. But that begins by us calling attention to it and calling it out. Whenever I have an opportunity, I make sure I reach out to my trans sisters because I want you to see diverse representation. So I have a black, brown, indigenous, everybody I want to come to the table because I want folks that have historically not seen trans representation to see the diversity that exists within our community. And I'm hopeful that others will do the same.
Yeah, it's an interesting observation. It gives me the opportunity to ask your note that you make about funders that help support our community and seats at the table. You are the only Black transgender grant maker in America. My goodness, that is incredible. Your efforts have helped distributing nearly $1 million in funding with Gileadsciences Transcend Community Impact Fund. Tell us, well, first off, congratulations, and what an achievement that is for a Black trans man. Congratulations. But explain to us what the fund does and your participation in it. How does that work?
So Gilead is an amazing partner in that they listened, right? Some of these same speaking points that I'm using today, I used with Gilead to make sure that they understood that there was this funding disparity that exists, and that when you put money into an LGBT pot, it doesn't necessarily mean that the T is going to get adequate funding in order to move their mission and issues along, and in order to build sustainable organizations. So what Gilead did was Gilead gave us $1 million, and they allowed us to identify small grassroots organizations. And when we say small, your operating budget had to be under $250,000, and we would gift them or grant them funding to help build sustainability. But the other thing that Gilead did is they had a capacity building that came with it, right? Because it's not enough to just give folks money. We want to make sure that they understand how to run viable organizations. When you hear non-for-profit, you're just like, oh, it's not really a business, but it really is a business. And it needs to be set up as a business. Your accounting needs to be in place. Your legal needs to be in place. Bylaws need to be in place. So we wanted to make sure that we were giving them the support that they needed to ensure that their organization would grow, that there would be some sustainability. And then we did it on a national lens. So we're looking at all states and spaces that historically did not have trans representation, right? So spaces like Georgia and Alabama and Tennessee and those spaces to provide the support needed so that we could grow these organizations. And we've done very, very well.
Yeah, and Gilead should be congratulated for their participation of making this program happen. And it reminds me, as I'm thinking about your answer about what you do as the first Black trans man in America involved in a funding program like this, and how we elevate portions of our LGBTQ community. I think about our acronym. We changed it, if you remember. Our acronym used to be the GLBT community. And then we changed it to LGBTQ to strengthen our stance and elevate our visibility for lesbians. I'm curious, as you were talking about that, would our community be stronger if we changed it to TLGBTQ? Or not TLGBTQ, TLGBTQ. Would we be stronger?
Some folks in the community are already doing that, putting the T first, right? Because it shows that their priority, that they're prioritizing the T. Unfortunately, it's within trans communities that are actually doing it. It'd be amazing if some of our L, G, and B counterparts would also recognize that shows where the priority is. But then I don't want it to just be surface with changing the acronym around, right? I want us to come up with a way that we are truly putting the T first, whether that means when we're advocating for additional resources, whether that means when there's an opportunity for increased visibility, that we're looking to that trans organization in your backyard that's already doing amazing work and just uplifting them. So yes, change the acronym around. That would be wonderful, but also put some substantial programming in place that shows that you're prioritizing the trans community.
Sean, I'm curious, talking about Black and Brown and trans, our acronym for gay men, lesbians, queer affirming. Do you have hope that we'll find this collaborative nature and work better together to make a stronger community? Do you have hope?
Of course, I think it already exists. I think we just have to have some conversations. We need more we need to talk to each other, right? We all work in these silos and we all do amazing things separately, and it just doesn't make sense. So I have incredible hope. I have hope for the future that we are going to, and not just within the LGBT community, right? But within the Black and Brown community, as it relates to the LGBT community. As a Black man, I know sometimes my own community looks at trans folks like, oh my, I can't, I don't understand. I'm not going to deal with it. This just doesn't make sense. This is an abomination. And we need to have discussions, because as a Black man, I recognize how our community is under attack. You remove the fact that I'm trans, I'm still a Black body. So when you see me in the street, the first thing you see is Black. And we have to make sure that we're working together. So these discussions have to happen. We just have to make sure, which is why I'm so appreciative of you having me on your show tonight, because it gives me an opportunity to like extend an olive branch. Like let's figure out how we work together. You're in Florida, I'm in New York. These are two I don't want to call them hotspots, but we organize. We know what it looks like to organize. So what does a joint organization look like? What does mobilization look like between New York and Florida? How do we make that happen? Those are the things that I want us to start talking about. Let's remove all of the nonsense, because at the end, our lives are at stake. Our freedoms are at stake, even more so than before. So we just have to figure it out. But I'm incredibly hopeful that we will figure it out.
Yeah,
we don't have a choice.
Your words ring well with me. Our print magazine in Florida is called Hotspots Magazine.
Hotspots, see?
and our goal at Queer News Tonight is to talk. So we're right there with you. I want to ask you one final question. Here in Florida, we always ask about Fort Lauderdale versus Miami, Broward County versus Dade County. I'm curious, for LGBTQ, Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx, let's divide and conquer. Who's the best?
Oh, the Bronx, baby. The Bronx, we're doing it big. Our event this year was amazing. It's growing every year. We're coming from Manhattan Pride.
Are you? Okay, very good. Yes. Sean, this has been a pleasure talking to you. I joke with you at the top. I feel like I'm talking to 5 different personalities representing our LGBTQ community, and that's quite a compliment to you and your work at Destination Tomorrow. One last thought. The organization, I'm sure this is observation's been made to you repeatedly. I personally loved the name of your organization in the Bronx, Destination Tomorrow, because just like in the Broadway musical Annie, you are always dreaming of tomorrow and you never get there. Your destination is never getting there. Yep. And that means we're always working harder to have a better tomorrow. That's wonderful.
Yes. And that was the entire point of the name. We're always growing, so we're looking to tomorrow.
Sean, Ebony, Coleman, thank you very much, and we'll have you back again at Queer News Tonight.
Thank you much. I appreciate it. You have a wonderful night.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBT